Hello, witches. Tuning in to point you towards a community resource that we have been growing since our inception. Join the Modern Witches newsletter for lunar insights, updates on community happenings, and podcast updates. When you subscribe to the Modern Witches newsletter, you'll receive lunar downloads at the new and full moons right into your inbox, complete with insights into what the lunar weather is doing, as well as spell suggestions and magical ways to interact with the energy. As well as our lunar newsletters, we send out Venus-themed offerings where we will send you ideas about how to activate pleasure in a radical way in your life. All of our newsletter subscriptions are easily managed through our preferences, so you get to choose what you get to opt into. Sign up for community conscious happenings and updates about the podcast. Our community is filled with so many beautiful witches who are also artists, activists, writers, business folks, and they have things to share with you. So if you want to stay in the know about what these modern witches are up to, subscribe to the newsletter and enjoy the magic. Hello, dear listeners. Welcome to the Modern Witches podcast. I am Casey Zabala, and I am delighted to have Heidi Smith here with me today to discuss prayer, among other things. Heidi is a psychosomatic therapist, registered herbalist, flower essence practitioner, and the author of the Bloom Book, as well as the Uncommon Book of Prayer. Thank you for being with us, Heidi. I'd love it if you could introduce yourself a little bit more and perhaps offer a prayer for our listeners and for us.
Sure. Hi, Casey. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Heidi. You ticked off a lot of my details. I work in private practice here in Brooklyn on Muncie Lenape land. And I've been in practice for about 11 years now. My practice has evolved to specialize in supporting survivors of complex trauma. And so I offer a very integrative and holistic approach to that. And it is a deep honor to be doing this work and getting to be writing about it and sharing that with people.
Thank you. That's great.
Yeah. So let me lead us in a little prayer.
Yeah.
You can go ahead and close your eyes or lower your gaze or whatever feels good for you. And let's just take a few deep breaths together. Dear Mother, Father, God, Spirit, the universe, our guides and angels, we call upon the powers of our highest selves, light, love, truth, nature, and healing. We call upon all of our angels, guides, and ancestors, and all those who are supporting us. We call on the spirit of modern witches. And may this conversation be surrounded in divine love and protection. May it be, and may we be purified and blessed. And may we be open to the highest levels of healing, light, wisdom, magic, opportunity, insight that are available to come through us today. And may our time together today be for our highest good and the highest good of all. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here with deepest gratitude. So be it.
Thank you. That was lovely. So I really like to start these conversations sort of getting a footing in someone's experience of spirit. And, you have such a really rich woven tapestry of experience in the healing arts. And I'd love to hear about where your own relationship with spirit was forged, perhaps. Like what was an early experience where you understood spirit was present and with you in the world?
Okay. Yeah, I think I understood the spiritual world very well, like many of us in childhood. and I spent a lot of time outside. I grew up in suburban Ohio, and I was lucky to have a backyard and access to a really beautiful park down the street. And so, I felt very safe outside. I spent most of my time in trees and in the forest. Um, I can I was raised in a very conservative religious environment, that didn't always didn't really resonate with me even at a young age, but I do remember, like, always having a relationship to God and the divine. I remember, at night just kind of talking to God conversationally like I would a friend. Um, I also remember, like, making medicine with flowers and with the honeysuckle in the backyard and these wild irises in the backyard. I remember climbing trees and just feeling so alive in the leaves and the inside the branches and saying spells and, feeling the wind and, that all felt very, like, magical and natural to me.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. I think there's something about being able to have those, like, unmediated moments in childhood with nature.
Mhm. Yeah, before the conditioning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it sounds like you sort of were raised in a framework of prayer, perhaps?
Mhm.
Um, and I'm curious, how that evolved over time for you, especially because I think prayer is a loaded word or feels like a loaded word maybe for some who come from religious backgrounds. Um, and maybe you can talk a little bit about um, how your relationship with prayer evolved through that or um, past that, if that makes
Mhm.
sense. Because your book is so beautifully talks about like the history of prayer and the roots of prayer and opens it up, opens that definition up for us.
Mm. Yeah. Yes, prayer is a very polarizing term because of its relationship to God and religion, and it was really interesting doing research on this book, because I was trying to understand my own relationship to prayer
Mm,
and what I believed about it, and, my book has a lot to say about what prayer is, but I'm actually the most interested in how we pray and why we pray. So that book is in service of those inquiries.
mm,
I would say that I was taught to think about God and prayer in a certain way that was very Catholic, Christian, and like all of the Abrahamic religions, that means that your divinity lies outside of yourself. And so that creates this separation. Um, and that created a lot of beliefs about my power, my agency, choice, boundaries, good and bad, binaries,
mhm,
duality. Um, And I found that, a lot of the dominant paradigms, um, associations with, you know like patriarchy, like internalized patriarchy, that can be a lot of guilt and shame and misogyny. So prayer and looking at what prayer was connected to and why I had these associations was a really interesting way to open that up and to look at kind of the genesis of those belief systems and how I had internalized those beliefs.
mhm,
Um, I don't think that religion is all bad. I think of it as kind of like Western medicine. That Western medicine and has helped a lot of people, but it's also harmed a lot of people. It's both.
mhm,
So we need to consider it in that context. And I also found, um, in the beginning, when I first started seeing clients, I knew that I wanted to start every session with a prayer and a grounding, and I noticed my own resistance around that, my own fear, like, "Oh, am I allowed to do this? Am I gonna get in trouble? Am I gonna hurt someone?"
Mm.
And I found that in the research that I was doing, asking people about their relationship to prayer, there were these fears like, "Oh, I'm gonna do it wrong, I'm gonna hurt somebody, I'm not allowed to do it." These, like, questions around permission kept coming up. Um, so it's been and any place that we're in resistance, I think is a good opportunity for deeper inquiry. So that's
Mm.
kind of how it all started blossoming.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think, there's as you were talking, I was reminded about so many instances of people asking me, clients, strangers, friends, you know, saying, "I was raised in this religion. Can I be a witch too?"
Mm.
And it's reminding me of kind of your framework around prayer really it resonated so much with me on many levels, but I think there's something that is innately, witchy about it, I guess, because of this
Around prayer
permission.
or around my book? Or both?
Prayer
Oh,
in
yeah.
both, prayer and your book.
Yeah, thank you.
Um, yeah, definitely a compliment. Um, and I think, there's a way in which witchcraft sort of allows us to reclaim our agency and our divine presence.
Yeah.
And religion oftentimes puts a boundary between maybe our experience and a divine presence.
Right, it creates that separation.
Yeah. Um, and so it's interesting, I think, for a lot of witches who navigate, their ancestral religious practices and reclaiming this power and agency. Um, and I'm wondering, just like in your experience working with folks, um, have you witnessed that or do you have any experiences where that was really challenging or a beautiful opening for folks?
Mm. Yeah, definitely both across the
Mhm.
board. I also just add here that I consider prayer and spell work to be the same. And
Great. Okay. Yeah.
yeah, just to
I was like, this is
simplify,
spells.
we could get into a philosophical debate about the differences between prayer and meditation and affirmation and spell work and resonant language, but to simplify, I'm just saying those are all the same thing.
Hmm.
Um, yes, and so as I was beginning to introduce this work, first of all, I was spending a lot of time with it on my own. And then I was starting to introduce it to my clients in a way that felt ethical and responsible. And of course, there were some people that were really not interested, and so I'm not going to push it, obviously. Um, but it's also a very self-selecting group of people that are working with me, and you can get a sense of my practice, and that's either interesting to you or not, and it's
Hmm.
fine if I'm not the right fit for you. But for the folks that were, interested, that were curious, yeah, the changes that I began observing were really remarkable, really beyond what I thought was possible. Because as a psychosomatic therapist, as someone who works with somatic understanding of healing, I kind of assumed that language didn't have a big impact, um, on the body, and that this work has really overturned that, and it has shown me that uh, language informs your biology and your physical functioning and behavioral patterns, and it goes both way. They're co-informing each other. Um, I'll share that the people who are creating their own language, who are working to understand, like, where scarcity statements like, "I can't, I don't know how, I won't, I'll never," the people that are, um, investigating where those live in the body and then accessing language that is also embodied and matching and in alignment with where they are in their process, that is a very powerful process, alchemical process of change. And then when you're bringing in the plants and any other elements that you're co-creating with, it just becomes more dynamic.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, as I was preparing for this conversation, I was reflecting on my own relationship with prayer, and it feels connected to my understanding of magic and witchcraft and spell work in such a
Mhm.
strong way because I was a deeply anxious kid, but and
Mhm.
raised in a Catholic household.
Oh, okay.
And I would have these like terrible nightmares, and which I would later to understand are just like spirit encounters. Um, but in order to fall asleep and like feel safe, I would pray,
Mm.
and I would like get in my zone, and I would pray, not like I wouldn't be reciting Our Fathers or
Mhm.
anything like that, but just like being in my own prayer system and not knowing what I was doing at all. But it was like the only way I could like calm myself down
Wow.
to sleep.
And it helped you.
And it helped me.
Mm.
And I still do it sometimes when I'm like really anxious in anxious moments, like
Mhm.
traveling or on a plane. And and I feel myself dropping into that like somatic practice is what it feels like to
Mhm.
me. Um,
Yeah.
and I was really struck by all the information you shared in your book about um, sort of our electromagnetic makeup in our body and how that's so um, reactive or affected by um, our thoughts and language and words and
Mhm.
um, just the vibrations that we are attuning to. And
Yeah.
I'm curious about like your research there, what it was like to kind of uncover that and experience that, and if you want to share a little bit more.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, there's so much to say
Yeah.
about how prayer is impacting the body on subtle energy levels, emotionally, physically. I do talk about the extracellular matrix, and that is one of the newer systems of the body. It's so fascinating.
Mhm.
Newly discovered, I should say.
Mhm.
Um, I think there's a lot of ancient wisdom and technology connected to the ECM, but it's only in its nascent stages in terms of being recognized in Western medicine. But that is made up of the fluid in the body, the fascia, the cell salts. It is inside of the cells, and it's also what connects the cells. So it's in between. It's literally the space in between. And previously, we thought that was inert, that it served no purpose. But now we're learning that it's the way that information is stored in the body and also how it travels. It has its own intelligence. And it is an incredibly subtle structure, very yin structure, like the lymphatic system, which is also not really recognized in Western medicine unless something's going wrong.
Mm.
Um, so, yes, it's my belief that that is a way to think of that as like the organ of prayer. And if you're familiar with the studies of or the science of cymatics and the studies of Dr. Masaru Emoto, um,
Mhm.
you know that sound and words reorganize matter at the cellular level, and the body is 70% water. Um, so that's just one way of thinking about how sound and prayer is impacting us. And again, I know some somatic practitioners are going to disagree with me, and that's fine. And it's true that you can't necessarily override your biology with language, but we know that endogenously produced sound in the form of chanting, humming, singing, that does create change on the cellular, metabolic, and also neurological levels. And it's been established that with repetition and the more consistently your prayers and affirmations are practiced, the greater that impact. So that data is there. It's
Mhm.
not theoretical. Um, and it's it's all in the ancient awareness. It's just becoming more and more validated, I think, now.
Right. Yeah. I mean, so interesting to think about. Yeah, I mean, the ancient alchemists and Gnostics and Egyptians were just intonating
Mhm.
words as part of their major spiritual access to the divine. Um, and the resonance that was created by that being such a healing thing. Um,
Yeah, and it was all and, I mean, indigenous medicine can be interpreted as, like, all ritual.
mhm,
So, just because we don't understand that in a Western framework doesn't mean that it's not real.
right. Yeah. And I mean, I'm encouraged by so much of the, you know, scientific data that's been collected on this and like the studies that people are doing and everything that you've shared in your book, because I think that it's showing me how much I mean, Western evidence there is, which some people need in order to um, I don't know, feel secure about entering into a practice or um, considering it as part of their healing journey.
Mm,
But it's also like it's coming into the consciousness in this other way that feels really deeply important.
right. I know that you've talked about this before on this podcast because, yeah, we don't need everything to be scientifically validated in order to know that it's true. Um, but it's also nice to have that as a backup.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, I don't know, it's interesting to be witnessing like the maybe dismantling. That's my word because it's like my prayer. Dismantling of like the Cartesian rationalist approach to the world, which like is so lacking on so many levels to make sense of our understanding and
Yeah,
our
it's just
reality.
very one-sided.
Yeah. Um, so I'm all for that. Um, and yeah, I mean, I'm curious to know like how your relationship with prayer has shifted throughout this process of writing the book and now in your practice, and if
Mm,
you're seeing it in the world in different ways now.
yeah. I would say that it's my books are my very much living documents. So, that this work is very alive for me right now. I have a very active prayer practice. Um, I think it was something that I always just instinctively did, but now I'm doing it even more intentionally, and it feels really good. I don't know. I sit and do it most mornings. There's prayers that I am always working on and editing and reciting out loud. And then there's prayers and poems and works of mindfulness that I'm collecting that I'm feeling drawn to. I have kind of like a prayer journal. Um, People send me prayers all the time. People ask me to pray for them, which also feels
Mhm.
great. Um, and yeah, that the way that I'm understanding prayer, so the way that prayer kind of opened for me in this book is as a methodology, a way of creating a progression from thinking to knowing to feeling to being. So eventually we're arriving at being states.
Mm.
And so my prayer work is in service of whatever I'm working through, um, emotionally or interpersonally, with my health, with other people, for the collective. It's going to include like progressions of language, and that is how I'm feeling the shifts happen.
Mm.
And so I sit and pray at my altar. Um, I pray on the train. I pray at night. I love to pray in nature. I love to do rituals in nature. I love to pray with people. I find that really wonderful. So that's and then with my clients, yeah, just helping them create their own prayers and their own
Mm.
ritual, teaching people how to do this. That's been really rewarding.
Mm. Yeah, that's so beautiful. I was struck by something you shared in the book that said, I wish that I had actually like underlined it, but there was a part where you were talking about how if 1% of a community is praying for peace of the community, then like crime rates drop.
They actually did a study. Yeah. The Maharishi Institute did studies in the 90s that if people come together and are praying intentionally together, that there will be a positive correlation with a decrease in crime rates.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And I think there's some I know that Dory Midnight is hosting alongside some incredible people these peaceful prayer circles um, for Palestine. And I find that work incredibly potent and powerful. Um, and I think there's like this criticism effect too that's happening in
Mm.
culture where people are saying thoughts and prayers are not enough.
Right.
And like I just want to acknowledge that like yes, we all need to be doing like practical activism pieces, but I also don't want to discount the power of prayer and ritual. Um, because I think that we're at this like intersection collectively where there is this real need for meaning and spiritual connection.
Mhm.
And the religious right has done a lot of damage
Mhm.
and used religion very effectively to kind of harm people, I want to say.
Yeah.
Um, and I feel like there's a real opportunity for people who are more tolerant, accepting, desirous of peace and equity to dig into a spiritual practice like prayer that actually is maybe more opening and uplifting, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Sure. Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. That's, uh, thinking about the potential of prayer work and also the limitations.
Mm,
I've spent time with that as well, and towards the end of my book, I do talk about the difference between intention and action,
mm,
and I think balance is one of the overriding principles of my work, my practice, and we can bring balance to this work as well, and, we have to honor where we are in the process, and sometimes we are gonna have resourcing and energy and the ability to be in action with our prayers. And with other things, um, it it might just be like showing up and forgiving ourselves for something, or just being really loving and gentle with ourselves. And I think we need to be really careful about applying this like it's never enough, because that can also be a way that power has been misused against us in the past. And that's not liberating anybody. That's not getting anybody empowered or free. So we can talk and talk and talk. And with no action, that is a form of self sabotage. And we can also, um, yeah, hold space for both and see
mm,
where um, we can be invited into our work and we can get to choose what our work is with compassion, with curiosity. Yeah.
Thank you for that. I really appreciate that. I think more and more I'm noticing, how we each have to meet each other where we are with whatever we're coming to the table with, and do the best we can.
Yeah. We contend. One of the quotes I'm really liking lately is we contend the part of the garden we can reach.
Mm. Yeah, that's really beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd love to invoke the flowers into this conversation since you mentioned a garden, and talk a little bit about your flower essence work. Um, yeah, I mean, it seems so fitting that, I mean, your first book about flower essence moves into this book about prayer because they they're both energetic medicine as you speak about. Um, I'm curious about how your relationship with flower essences bloomed. What was that like for you? When did you meet them?
Yeah, I found flower essences when I was 26. I my Sadly, my younger brother died. He
Mm,
committed suicide, and it plunged me into a very dark night of the soul. I do credit him with setting me on my path.
mm,
I was introduced to Bach mimulus, which is the bravery flower. It was given to me by a friend, and at that time, I had, no way to comprehend what this medicine was, but it was helping me. It was helping me make some pretty dramatic changes in my life, and I decided to leave my previous career in magazine publishing and go back to school to study mental health counseling. After that, I enrolled in a 3-year herbalism program at Arbor Vitae, which I really loved. I loved my school so much. And I began apprenticing with my teacher, Claudia Keel, and also taking other flower essences classes with Patricia Kaminsky, Richard Katz, David Dalton. And yeah, I mean, that work really just started opening for me. I didn't like in magical and unexplained synchronistic ways, as you probably know. It didn't really make sense in the beginning. I couldn't explain it very well to people. People didn't understand like what I was doing or like why I didn't want to get licensed as a mental health counselor. Because I wanted to work more integratively in a certain kind of way. And then I just kept working with the flowers and then writing about them and teaching about them, meeting other people that were having amazing experiences. And then, yeah, prayer, which was always a part of making medicine for me, started to evolve as its own thing. And I mean, one of the definitions of flower essences to me is that they are liquid prayers.
mm,
So I kind of think of them as the same thing.
mhm. Yeah, I love that. I feel they're so entwined.
Mhm.
Um, I my flower essence teacher is Liz Migliorelli,
Oh,
and
yeah.
um, she taught us to pray while you're making your essence. And I was just like, it's like woven into the practice.
Yeah.
And it really resonates. Everything, in your book of prayer really resonated with me with my experience of like working with the flowers and the sensation of taking a flower essence for a while and letting its energy kind of come into you and actually like feeling the quality of my energy shift,
Mm.
you know?
Mhm. Mhm.
I've had friends of mine who say like, "Wow, you look different." Like,
Oh,
"What's
yeah.
happening?" It's like, "Oh, I'm taking this flower essence." And I think it feels very palpable and real to me.
Great selling point for
Yeah,
our culture.
right? I
"You
don't
can
know,
look
like
younger."
yeah. I don't know about that, but maybe just, like, more alive,
More present.
more present.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I can sense it. Like, there's a way that my posture is different when I'm taking different
Mhm.
flower essences or whatever it might be. But they're very powerful, powerful medicines.
Yeah, I mean, of course, I obviously believe in them unequivocally. Um, I think it's interesting. Some people are more, receptive to them than
Mm,
others, and it's interesting watching people in the process of complex trauma recovery. Sometimes shifts will happen that they're not, like, emotionally or somatically aware of, but it is
Mm.
creating these changes because you don't necessarily have to believe in them for them to work because resonance is a law. It's just resonance is resonance, whether you believe in it or not. And then as people progress in their recovery and they become more relaxed and in their body and present, then their sensory perception can, it has an easier time of
Mm.
perceiving the medicine. That's just something I observe that I think is really cool to see that happen.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I it's interesting just, a lot of this is such energetic work, and if you're in a place of, activation in a way, it's like it's hard for you to kind of really be able to feel everything because it might be just too much
Yeah.
to feel, right?
Yeah,
Um,
and that's I think that's a message throughout my book is it is a good idea to cultivate some kind of practice with stillness and
mm,
presence so that we can be in that imaginal realm more easily. We can be in our intuition, our sixth sense, so that we can, yeah, perceive things on on subtler levels. I think it makes things easier on ourselves.
yeah, yeah. Um, I definitely, since I'm in this process of, I don't know, yeah, releasing my addiction to social media.
Oh,
Um,
same. We need to flower us some
yeah, seriously, yes. But you have this moment in your book when you kind of talk about social media that I really appreciated and how it can create this kind of like extractive cycle.
Mm.
Um, and I don't know. I wonder if you have any ideas for folks who are like trying to like limit their interaction with social media. How has that been for you?
Mm. Yeah, well, I mean, I'm very much feeling powerless to a certain extent about that,
Mm,
and I I am doing my best to bring my A game. Bringing a lot of consciousness to that. I don't think it's all bad, but I think that the negatives far outweigh the benefits for me. It seems to have diminishing returns. I
mhm.
think everybody gets to decide what their work is. I respect if that's your work. It is not primarily my work. Um, so yeah, I've had to like deeply question my relationship to it and how I kind of go into a codependent wounded relationship.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, relatable.
yeah, and it's like, okay, well, this is mostly like I have this phrase on my window in front of my altar here. It says, does this honor my divinity? And is this a reflection of my divinity?
Mm,
And there's so many ways of interpreting that. Like, is this a heart connection? Is this giving me power? Is this um is this a secure attachment? Is this source energy or is it depleting? And most of the time, unfortunately, social media is the negative for me.
right.
So I guess just the first thing is to get curious about it. Understand that this is a game that is set up to make us lose. No one is set up to win this game.
Yeah.
It's another facet of patriarchy, capitalism, white supremacy culture.
Mhm.
It's very narcissistic. It's intended to exploit all of our attention and make us feel depressed and addicted. So if you need to engage with it for any reason, great. But know that the house always wins, and this is time we're not gonna get back. It's not a source connection, it's not.
Yeah. Thank
I
you for
respect
that.
that this is some people's, like, community, I get it, like, and
Yeah.
it's not all bad, but for me personally, like, the negatives far outweigh the positives.
Yeah, I feel that. I think it's, And it's transformed over time where, like, once I was, like, meeting all these beautiful people and, like, making friends that became, like,
Yeah,
real
you're off
friends
of
in the
it,
flesh.
right?
Yeah, I'm pretty yes, I'm off.
I really appreciated your treatise, on that. I was like, "Yes."
Yeah,
I
I mean, it's hard and it's weird because 'cause you're, like, a business, but I think what you said is, like, really resonating is, like, it's not my work, and for some, that's your work, and that's fine, but, like, it became my work in this way that
Yeah.
felt
Yeah.
really exploitative and, like, not very generative or supportive,
Right. Not very
and I was like,
generative and not and would it feel good to my ego to have a bigger following? Sure. Would it feel good to maybe reach more people in a sense to help them? Okay. But there's lots of ways that we are being of service and we are
mhm,
reaching people and um there's a lot of mystery here too. Like
yeah,
we don't fully know how like when we throw a pebble in the pond, like how those ripples are going to ripple out, right?
right. Yeah, and to bring it back to this, like, vibrational conversation, I think that I noticed I have to be more intention about my ripples or, like, the
Your
ways that I'm
ripples.
sending out energy into
Yeah.
the world
Yeah.
because I'm not just like, "Oh, I'm gonna post something on this algorithm and see what happens." It's like, "Oh, no,
Mm.
I'm gonna, like, connect with the herbal shop in my community and, like, try to make connections there and see if I can do readings or, just put myself out in the world in, like, a more energetically grounded way."
Yeah,
Um,
thanks for saying that because I also think people with platforms, we really need to look at like all of the content and noise. And it's yes, it's empowering for people to be sharing their voice and their stories and their wisdom. But like if everyone is talking out there at once, then what are we hearing?
mhm.
What are we
Yeah.
and how are we engaging with the natural world? And so it just
Mhm.
sounds like you were questioning that and you pulled your energy back and decided to redirect it into different channels that felt more aligned for you.
Yeah. That's the goal, to garden more,
It's great.
you know? Um, yeah, I mean, I think we've had such, like, a lovely, like, winding conversation, and something I often ask my guests is, how do you feel about practicing this spiritual path in a modern context? Um, and I think we've woven that in, but I'm curious for you, like, what is it like to kind of bring, especially prayer, um, into this modern world, and does it feel like it's breaking through this noise that you're talking about?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, sometimes I feel like yes. And I feel like when this book started coming in, I'm not an expert on writing books, but I've done it twice. And both
You're pretty
times,
good at it.
thanks.
Yeah.
Both times and I would have totally cringed at the way that I used the birthing metaphors to having a book, but and I've never given birth to a human baby, but I really do think that it's probably similar in a lot of ways. And it comes in so strong for me, and there's like an urgency, and I have to get this synthesized and out in the world. And a whole new, like, skill set, energetic, psychic skill set comes in, and I just know what I'm doing, but it's not really me that's doing it, if that makes sense.
Mhm,
And so, um, like, there's a way in which I really trust that energy because it's coming through me. I'm not making anything happen. And it's very mysterious. And then there's other places where, yeah, I'm like in my imposter complex. And
mhm.
is this moving the needle at all? Does anyone hear me? Um, so I think it's both. I mean, I'm lucky that I have a very consistent practice. I have a great community, so I can see where the shifts are happening there, and then I can see things moving in the collective, but I think it's also, like, a very confusing time here, and it's scary and sad and miraculous and all the things.
Mm, totally. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'd love it if you could share. I typically ask for practice, but a prayer for weathering these deeply troubling and transformative
Mm.
times.
Yeah, I mean, I did include a couple of prayers like that in the end of my book. So, my
Yeah.
book, as you know, doesn't it's more concerned with the how of prayer. So, I'm looking to help people create their own prayer language, but it does have a few prayers in it that I've written, and I did write a prayer for the new earth. So, um, I would love it if people felt called to check that out. I wasn't gonna read it, I was actually just gonna share a couple of phrases of,
Great.
prayer language that I've been using lately. So something that I'm really interested in right now, it's, like, definitely influenced by this book and how I'm living this book right now is, practicing the art of living well inside of this crumbling world.
Hmm.
And because I am feeling very called to fill my cup so that I can live, love, create, and serve from a very full cup. And so, something I find myself saying a lot lately is, please show me how to make this easier on myself.
Mm.
Whereas before, it was harder on myself, like many people. Like I can be very critical and even punitive. So I'm going all of now. That's old paradigm for me. And, something I say every day, and this is also in my book, but when I pray every day, I always say, I pray for the hearts of all humans to open and awaken immediately to the sacredness and interconnectedness of all life. May the way showers, truth tellers, wisdom keepers, earth stewards, and ascended teachers of the earth come into greater power at this time. So that's kind of like my prayer for the earth that I feel called to say.
Mm. That's beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, I think it's so important for us to remember this very simple and effective tool that we all have of like really crafting these beautiful intentional statements and dropping into our heart and speaking them from our heart. And it's such a powerful magic.
Thank you. Yeah, and it can be really simple. It can be 3 lines, and yes, prayer belongs to everyone. You don't have to be frightened of it.
Hmm.
It's safe, it's accessible.
And there's no need to buy anything to
You don't
practice
have to
it,
buy anything.
you know?
It's stuff free.
Yeah, we love that. um, Yeah, I've loved this conversation. I feel like I could talk to you for ages, but I really highly recommend all of our listeners and our audience to go out and get the Uncommon Book of Prayer because it's a wealth of inspiration and um, a really beautiful thing to have. I had it by my bedside, and it was just nice to be able to kind of like tune in before bed and read little bits. Um, and yeah, just it feels like a really important addition to a library right now. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Will you share where folks can connect with you and support your
Sure.
work?
Yeah, you can go to my website, which I'm updating pretty regularly. My practice is called Moon and Bloom. And so my website is moonandbloom.com. And you can try to find me on Instagram, but it's pretty inconsistent there. But yeah, I am there sometime. So I love to connect with people.
Thank you so much, Heidi.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be here.
Thank you for tuning in to the Modern Witches podcast. We hope you've been inspired to cultivate your own magic and to craft your own spiritual practices. Let us know what sparked your curiosity by leaving us a comment on this episode or leave us a review. And don't forget to subscribe to the show so that you never miss an episode. Your feedback and engagement truly fills our cups. If you're looking for more ways to gather with your fellow witches, please support our work on Patreon. Learn more at modernwitches.org. Blessed be.